with responsibility for culture in the Prime Minister's office, Dr. Errol Sebastian Bolden, Reverend Clayton Springer, Reverend Luther Johnson, Ms. Sheron Johnson, Dr. Sheron Johnson, Mistress of Ceremonies, Mr. Marc Andre Daniel, Creative Collaborator, Dr. Patricia Saul, former Principal, Earlston Teachers Training College, staff of the National Library Service, staff of the Ministry of Culture, members of the media, and specially invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the Director and staff of the National Library Service, and of course on behalf of Dr. Errol Bolden, to this book launch. We invite you to fully participate and be engaged with us as Dr. Bolden promises us a soul-filling journey through his books, entitled The Lord is My Shepherd, and we've had prayer, so we definitely know the Lord is our shepherd. Our journey to the other side of the storm, and the storms have been quite a few in recent times. We have COVID-19, we had ash fall, and we recently had a real storm, surprisingly so. Are they still listening? Dr. Bolden says on the title of his book, they are still not listening. And we're always encouraged to listen to the still small voice. The still small voice. But my duty here this morning as the Acting Deputy Director of the National Library Service is to encourage you, to welcome you to the headquarters of the National Library Service, and to encourage you to utilize our 7 branch libraries across Barbados, because it is good to make use of our services. And as we open slowly from the COVID, to get back to face, because there's a time coming when we will be able to gather again. And we want you to be part of that gathering, to be part of the National Library Service, and to make good use of our services. Just to let you know, the library is open for business. So welcome to the National Library Service, all of you, and please enjoy what is on offer today as we welcome Dr. Bolden. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to today's featured author, Dr. Errol Sebastian Bolden. Basically, for you to get to know who this man is. Professor Errol Bolden is a professor and past chair of the Department of Social Work at Coppin State University in Baltimore, Maryland. He has also served as a part-time senior lecturer at the Cayfield campus of the University of the West Indies and as a visiting professor at Addis Ababa University in Ethiopia, where he now primarily works with doctoral students on their dissertation research. He has over 23 years' experience as a macro practitioner. His research agenda focuses on community and organizational capacity building, university and community partnerships, faith-based community development, the globalization of higher education, as well as on disengaged dads and disengaging of males in the academy. Having said all this, one of the most important facts to note that he is a son of the soil and a true Caribbean man. He has spent over 25 years in the US, but his heart and soul, and dare I say, navel string, is buried right here. Professor Bolden migrated to the United States in 1984 to pursue his tertiary level education. He earned his associate and bachelor degrees from Northwest Nazarene University in Nampa, Idaho, and a master's in social work from Howard University in Washington, D.C. in 1990. In 1992, he moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where he completed a second master's degree in public health and a PhD with an emphasis in social policy analysis and public health from the University of Pittsburgh in 1996. He is an author of adult and children inspirational books. He is a motivational speaker and the president and owner of Universal Inspirations LLC. His first two published children's books, The Sparrow and the Mustard Seed and Tambazi and the Golden Touch, are currently available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Nobles, and other major online sources. He also has another children's book, The Mystery of the Duck, which was released in the summer of 2021. Professor Bolden has also invented a therapeutic card game to aid in the relief of grief, recovery counseling and training, or dialogue among family and friends, along with a therapeutic coloring book for kids. Since the start of the COVID pandemic, he has written on matters related to COVID-19 and racial issues that he has produced in poetry form. He's currently recording some of his works, which will be available on CD and iTunes to be released in late 2021. Professor Bolden is also part of the Maryland Medical Corps and a certified grief recovery specialist. He's currently taking classes in collective and cultural trauma relief. Since the start of the pandemic, he has conducted over a dozen workshops and presentations in the US, Caribbean, and Canada, addressing the pandemic, disengaged dads, and the church response to racism, grief, and loss, and other public and mental health issues exacerbated by COVID-19. Professor Bolden is an inspirational speaker and writer. Since the start of the pandemic, he has written over 200 poems, 30 plus children's stories, one of which will be published next month. He has completed a devotional guide and published a therapeutic coloring book under the theme, The Passions of the Period. That is just during the shutdown. During this period, he has also submitted guidelines for the development of a therapeutic app based on therapeutic grief and loss. And that is a card game that he has developed. Since arriving in Barbados, he has been working closely with Marc Andre Daniel to put music to the selected pieces of his work. The previously mentioned achievements truly do not sum up the man I call Errol, as a friend, a supporter, and mentor to many. Whereas the purpose of his return to Barbados this time might have been for a sad occasion and the passing of a close friend, he has also used his time to counsel and lighten the burden of many friends and family of his dearly departed friend. He has also used the occasion to attend meetings of the Men's Forum and to offer spiritual guidance and to connect with guidance counselors and teachers. Thus is the inspiration, drive, and commitment of Professor Bolden. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to meet the author, Professor Bolden, who will give an overview of his selected works from the journey to the other side of the storm.
Thank you very much, Dr. Johnson. A pleasant good morning to each and every one of you. To the Honorable Minister, it's good to see you in person again. I was telling him the last time that I saw him, he sang at my brother's, one of my brother's weddings many years ago. And it's good to see you again. And all of you who are in attendance, it's good to see you again. And I would look forward to having a dialogue with you. And I know we've recognized several individuals, but I never leave out my family because it's not too often that I have family in the audience. And I want to recognize the presence of my oldest brother, George Haynes. Thank you so very much, George, for coming. And, we're challenged to mentor the younger ones. So I also want to recognize one of my godsons, Rodney King, who is also joining us, Rodney. And I do want to thank each and every one of you, and I will do so in different ways at the appropriate time. Language by itself must be regarded as a compendium of complexities. From its deep historical roots to its contemporary visages, language is both fluid and rigid, inspiring and damning, soothing rising temperatures, and inciting the impressionable to violence. The power of language should not be understated and cannot be overstated. Whether delivered from the mouths of babes or from the lips of our griots, language compels us to act whether consciously or unconsciously. Territories have been expanded or diminished by the informed, ill-informed, or misinformed. The fate of generations for centuries have been shaped by the skillful use of language. Those of us who use language as our platform to reach the masses must understand its power and be willing to respond to any challenges to the power given to us. For we are the mouthpieces of many as we highlight society's conscience and realities, painful though they may be at times. Language, therefore, is personal and private, public and social, political and spiritual, to name a few. It is against this backdrop that these collections and many more were written and delivered. They stand as an eclectic tapestry of the passions of the period and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you selections from The Journey to the Other Side of the Storm. They are not listening, the fight for justice, and the Lord is my shepherd, my journey into his presence. In addition, there will be a special cultural tribute that you must stand by for that will occur later in the program. We will start today's session with the journey to the other side of the storm. In the early days of the pandemic, there was much anxiety. A lot of mixed messages were floating around. The professional community sought to get a good understanding of what is now known as COVID-19. And so we were hearing messages about the wearing of masks, what type of masks to wear, how we should wear them, how far apart we should stand, should we wash all of our foods, and should we also wash the containers? Should we shut everything down? And it is against this background that this book was written. And so the first piece that I would like to share with you is a piece called Back Up Off of Me. Back Up Off Me. Now, and remember, poetry gives us a lot of latitude. So those of you who are English majors, don't be focusing on the degree to which I am maybe politically correct or following all of the nuances of the language. I am going to exercise a lot of poetic license today, so relax. But this piece came to me as I went into the supermarket. And I am someone who would talk to a roach if a roach says hello. But when I went into this supermarket with all of the anxieties of the pandemic, I really didn't want to talk to anyone. And so I started pushing the trolley a different way. In fact, I didn't push it, I pulled it, because I know how far I could stand behind someone. And when I pulled the trolley, I knew I would at least get 6 feet behind me. And so I felt kind of safe doing those things because I had my wipes and all of those things. But then after I left that one supermarket and went to another, I rushed in and I realized that I didn't pick up a trolley, I had a basket. And then, unlike the other experience, there was this young lady who kept coming up under me, talking to me. And I would move around and she would move around. And then I would just be nodding, but she would keep talking. And I'm saying I don't have the basket to help me out. I said, Errol, think, put your degrees to work. And so I then had to put down the basket and walk 6 feet ahead of the basket, which looked a bit odd, right? But I left there feeling frustrated. I said, why are these people up under me? Don't they know that there's a pandemic going on? And so when I came home, I said, I have to get the message out to some people that although you may want to be friendly, just back up off of me. So this is a small piece, and I deliberately put it in the front of the book because this one largely focuses on the pandemic, but the pieces are not only unique to the pandemic. So it's unusual, as stated by some, to have such a piece at the front of a book that is supposed to be inspirational, but yet I wanted to send a message, and this is a message that some of us should still send even now. Back up off of me. It's a short one. Folks, this is no joke. Back up off of me. When you see me shopping, exercising, praying, or playing, back up off of me. Physical distancing is critical for both you and for me. So, back up off of me. I know it may be cultural, but now is not the time. No hugs, no kisses, handshakes, or close contact. Just what? Back up off of me. Love does not cancel out the risk, so keep your love in check. Back up off of me. This is not mean, just realistic. So if you see me, wave if you must, and nod. Just back up off of me, right? So that is the message until we get this pandemic under control. Some of you, like me, need to be telling people to back up off of me, right? Now, another piece that I would want to share with you has to do with a fun or more exciting thing that came about as a result of the pandemic. When we were in the period of the serious lockdown, where we couldn't go many places, people were driving very little. And so the air was so clean in comparison to how it normally is. You heard reports of different animals that you didn't see starting to reclaim a little bit of their territory. And there's a track right beside my house. And I started doing more walking than I have ever done in my life. I began to walk as much as 7 miles, although I had to go in the house and rub my feet before I walked up the stairs. But it was an opportunity then where we were able to walk and enjoy nature. And as nature began to come a little closer to us, and as we begin to see something about this air seems a little more refreshing, we had time to, and with the lockdown, we had time to pause and appreciate nature and all that nature offers us. And so one day, as I was walking around the track, I saw all of these birds flying around, and I just stood and I looked at the birds and I said, you know something? We tend to underestimate the value of birds. And so I wrote this simple piece, and I want you to listen to it because it is one of the contemplative pieces about birds. We take birds for granted. Sometimes we eat them. The doves, the pigeons. Sometimes we race them. And there's some other things we do with the birds that I will leave that alone, right? The piece, the bird. Have you seen the early bird searching for its worm? Have you heard it chirping as if to say, no stress? Have you watched it build its nest far from an easy prey? Have you seen it push through storms with little care or fear? Have you seen it take on tasks much bigger than itself? Have you seen it hibernate so it could be replenished? Have you seen it parenting, teaching while it is feeding? And have you seen it view the world from many different angles? Have you seen birds bonding, supporting one another? Have you seen them in full formation, streamlining as they fly? Have you seen them soar to heights to get a bird's eye view? And have you seen them land, not ruffling a single feather? So have you ever stopped and wondered how a bird retains its beauty? Have you? Have you wondered how they thrive amidst the storms of life? Have you wondered how with very little they seem to make things work? And have you wondered how they labor from dawn to the setting of the sun? There's so many lessons a little bird can teach us. Lessons about love and labor, of persistence and its prize. So next time you see a bird, stop, look, listen and learn, and you would be much wiser from what it has to reveal. So I know you may want to eat the bird. You may want to race the bird, but observe the bird a little, and we all would be much wiser. Now, the pandemic also revealed to us how much we are really not in charge of what goes on. No, we as mankind like to think that we are ever so powerful and that we could make anything happen. But the pandemic reminded us that we are not the ones in control and that we cannot always determine the course of life. And so many times it caused us to sit and recognize our powerlessness and wondered what would happen if we really could control things. And so this piece that I'm going to read to you is called If I, and I use a lot of analogies with a computer because everything now is computerized, or cell phones, so many things. So many people say we're just a number. And we think that because we are just a number, we can be moved around and shifted around easily. But listen to this piece, If I could press a reset button and travel back in time, I wonder what would really change and what would be the same. If I was born another year, how different would I be? Would I be leading slaves to freedom, or lay dying in the field? Would I be working in the trenches or sitting in the boardroom? If I could press the forward button and travel to the future, would I be longing for the past, or would I be contented? If I could find a place and time to be all I could be, would I like who I would be, or would I struggle to be free from all I have achieved? If I could press an enter button and fully seize the moment, would I be contented, or would I feel frustrated? How would I see the world we live in, and how different I would be? If I lived in the present and not the future, how would my day begin and end? How long each day would be? If I could press the escape button and stop wondering what if, what would be the outcome? Then I may be able to live in the present, and then, only then, would I be free. Now, this other piece that I'm going to share to you is entitled, share with you, is entitled, I Have to Tell Somebody. And this is about, and ladies, I know when I say this piece, I sometimes get lashes from the ladies, so I'm saying this is a disclaimer up front. There is one that speaks to the other side. When you buy the book, you can see that I did justice to the other side as well. So I'm just letting you know, if you have tomatoes or things, don't be throwing them at me, because I have to tell somebody. And this has not been all the experiences of all males, but this is the experience of some males during the pandemic. I have to tell somebody. Let me say up front that I'm not throwing shade, Shamina. It's my goddaughter over there, so I'm picking on her. I do not usually talk about my feelings, but I have to tell somebody. A few years ago, I started on a journey that began with the wedding of all weddings. I felt like Prince Charming, who had found his beauty, who was not asleep, but was hidden in plain sight. For it seemed like I was looking for her for decades, and she was right there in my circle of friends all along. One day, things changed. We fell in love and subsequently got married. I was finally going to have my happily ever after, or so I thought. This radiant beauty that I professed my love for and devotion to was transforming into something that I did not recognize. It seems like I was in a beehive with constant buzzing day and night, night and day. What was I supposed to do? She no longer took pride in how she looked, nor pride in how she spoke. Her words were like a razor blade, or more accurately, a sword. She said she already married me, so she had no one to impress. I thought, wow, who was I? Was I not worth her looking good for anymore? I used to take pride in celebrating her as my wife and introducing her to everyone. Now I would not dare attempt that, as I never knew who would show up or how she would represent herself by what she said. My beauty had turned into a wrecking ball, wrecking lives in our home and wrecking the spirits of those she encountered. Debbie Downer had nothing on her. All I could focus on is finding an escape from this dungeon. Prayers, counseling, pleading, all seemed to fall on deaf ears. My sleeping beauty now turned into a wrecking ball. Her appearance and her sharp tongue were my constant torment. Isolated due to this pandemic has left me vulnerable to a plethora of emotions. Some I refuse to hear myself describe. I do not know how much more of this I can take. I've waited so long to wed, and now I'm in torment. You're shaking your heads. I'm so glad that no tomatoes or anything came my way. But I saw some of the expressions on some of your faces. So you buy the book and you will see that it is balanced, right? Now, during the pandemic too, and I don't know about you, but I know about me, in March of last year, the university told us to go home and not return for a couple of weeks after spring break. So myself and other faculty said, oh, we're going to get an extended spring break. We thought that we were only going to be off for about 3 weeks or so. And so we made plans for that, only to be told that we probably will be out for the remainder of the semester. And so we were exposed to a lot of online training, and the students were fretting because they said they didn't sign up for any online teaching. And these are adult students, but we still had to make a lot of changes and listen to a lot of frustrated individuals. And as like many folks, we dressed down. We did, sometimes we would only put on a top that was dressy, and we would have on jeans or some kind of sweatpants. And so to go back dressing up is going to be a challenge for me, because I'm one who normally teach in a tie. When I teach, you can tell when I'm teaching, I'm different than how I would normally dress. But we make sure you have on a nice tie and top, and made sure the bottom was all as it should, in case you had to stand up. Because I'm sure you would have heard of reports where people, including professors, got caught literally with their pants down, right? But we were there, and because there was such a change in the environment, we did not sometimes know what was the day for our classes, because we had to write notes to say, wait, I teach today, don't I? Because everything was running together. And it seems like, I remember one day I was sitting and watching TV, and I was watching a clock, and it was just tick-tock, tick-tock. And I'm saying, that would drive me bonkers, hearing that all of the time. And so you know how I operate. Then I wrote a piece simply called Tick-Tock, to capture the mood of the moment. Tick-tock goes the clock. I watched it as seconds sped away. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Seconds turned into minutes, minutes turned into hours, hours turned into days, days swiftly turned into weeks. Tick-tock goes the clock. I cannot separate time from reality. Time has become so fluid, for nothing is separate anymore. Tick-tock, tick-tock goes the clock. A moment becomes more than a moment. Insanity lurks in the background. Tick-tock, 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 tick-tock. What am I supposed to do with this passage of time? All I hear is tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. If there was a bird in the clock, I would have strangled the bird, all because of this tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. All of this time wasting away, or is it? All I'm hearing is tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. But even now, as the pandemic continued to pass, we wondered whether this would ever come to an end. And although with the vaccines, we are seeing signs of hope, we are in a little different place than we were, say, October, November of last year, where it seems like things were going from bad to worse. And whenever there was a holiday in the United States, and I know in Barbados, and I'm not going to touch the bus crawl situation, I'm leave that alone. But you know, there was a reason why things were tightened whenever a holiday came around, right? Because after being pent up for so long, there was a level of frustration as you long to be free. And even those of us who are trained in public health and know what to do, sometimes we had to remind ourselves, hey, hold up. Whenever we saw someone we didn't know, or we saw someone we knew that we hadn't seen for a while, we sometimes made some errors. And I'll leave you to wonder what those errors were. Because we wondered if this would ever end. And as we heard about death after death, and particularly in the United States, where everyone is talking about their freedom, even if their freedom infringes on your freedom. That was the emphasis, to be free. And so as we heard about deaths, escalating, and we hear about you cannot have a proper burial, and family members can't even come to be part of the rituals to say goodbye. And people were warehoused in trucks and what's not. Bodies were warehoused in refrigerators. It seems like life was taking the darkest of turns. And so those of us who are in the helping profession had to make sure we remind others, and those of us who are persons of faith also had to remind others that life is not over yet. And so this piece that I'm going to leave you with as I conclude the excerpts from this book is entitled, Life's Not Over Yet. At the dawning of this day, did you not open your eyes and breathe? Did you not raise one leg and then another? Or maybe both at the same time? Then maybe, just maybe, you fell on your knees and said, Dear Lord, thank you, Jesus. Please, please have mercy on me, this sinner whose life was only saved by your grace. So thank you, dear Lord. Have mercy on the many broken lives whose pain yet knows no victory, for they do not know the master, the captain of the ship. So as they sail life seas uncharted, they're unable to find their way. Dear Lord, I know life's not over yet. So as my soul was fed, I rose to find what is needed to sustain this temple you loaned to me. And in my kitchen were the blessings he alone provides. Filled with gratitude, I ate and prayed for those who had no meal. I prayed that a way would be provided so that they would also have a meal. And as I showered in warm water, I praised the Lord that I had water. And as I showered, I sang praises to the God who does provide for every need that I may have. Fully clothed, another blessing. I left home aware life's not over yet. And as I stepped out in the sunshine, I took a deep breath and exhaled, another sign that I am blessed. Then I started on my journey feeling good, knowing that I'm truly blessed, blessed so I could be a blessing, ever mindful that the God of love will smile on those who honor him through faith put into action. So as I went about my day, I looked for those whom I could bless. And as my day came to an end, I thanked the Lord for his protection. And as I lay down for my rest, I smiled, knowing life's not over yet. Dr. Johnson.
Thank you, Errol. Thank you. In that first session, if I could just put it all together, he spoke about pivoting, resetting our cultural norms, spaces, thoughts, views of the world, and relationships. I will now call on Miss Amena Weekes, who's a longtime friend of the author, to give her personal reflections on his work.
Good morning to everyone. I attended my first book launch in October 2018 after I got an invitation. The launch, this was held at the Hilton Hotel, and Professor Dr. Errol S. Bolden was the author of the children's books which he spoke on. And we were enlightened about all of these children's books and everything they meant and things that he said about them. I was also fortunate to attend a session on compassionate ministries where the said Dr. Bolden was the presenter. And this was at the Hallsworth Church of the Nazarene a Saturday morning. Dr. Bolden was the presenter. He was very knowledgeable about the topic and well prepared. We never thought that he fumbled in any way. He knew what he was talking about. And all the points that we received were well received, and we went away realizing that we could understand a lot more things about sympathy and empathy. At the end of the session, I remembered asking Brother Bolden, I don't know if he remembered, is this one of the things a professor does? Remember that? He said yes, and a lot more. During the COVID pandemic, I know he mentioned some stuff just now about the time he had and the walking he did. But apart from the walking, he also had time to write, and to write a lot of poems and prayers and whatever came to him. He did a lot of pieces, and I was fortunate enough to have read almost all of them. I don't think I had all, but they would have reflected like the seasons: spring, summer, autumn, winter. He talked about everything that you would see, and things that we do take for granted. And then when it came to us here in Barbados, there was the seaweed, and we know about that, the seaweed in our beaches, in our waters, and on the sand. Then the St. Vincent volcano ash was another talk. There were pictures going around where people showed that the sand was full of ash, but as they walked, their footprints were left behind. So they moved away that ash and left their footprints. Those were also listed in some of his works of art. I know that Dr. Bolden accumulated lots of writings, lots of poetry, lots of material for books, lots of prayers. And he's here today to at least give you an insight into a lot of them. I just want to say congratulations, Dr. Errol, on your magnificent achievement. You've been doing this for years, and I know that God has given you what he has laid on your heart, and today we'll understand everything that he has done, and we can appreciate it. May God continue to bless you. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm multitasking as usual. At this point, I would like to invite the Honorable John King to receive a copy of the book, They Are Still Not Listening, The Fight for Justice, from Professor Bolden.
One of the things the Prime Minister challenged those of us who are part of the African diaspora to do, right, the Barbadian diaspora to do, is to make sure that we do not forget home and that we use our skills and talents to continue to uplift those who are still here and to collaborate, as you hear I'm doing, with others. And so what I would like to present to you, Minister, is the first part of a collection that I'm doing to begin the conversations on race. There's a workbook that's part 2 to this one. So this morning, however, I do want to present this book, They're Still Not Listening, The Fight for Justice, and also 2 bookmarks. One has your initials, and you would recognize the initials on the second one. And the bookmark says, our words have power to transform a lion into a lamb. They can also bring the tallest giants to its knees and turn a mountain to a molehill. And it reminds us all that words have power. And sir, I am honored by your presence here this morning, and it is my delight to present this book to you, and may you find it.
First of all, let me say good morning, everyone, and thank you so very much, Dr. Bolden. You know, oftentimes when I speak about racism in Barbados, People who've not experienced it seldom understand how it impacts on you, even as a child being raised in England. And it is interesting that at this particular point in time where we're having discussions on reparations and all the other things that go on around the world, that you would take the time out to do this work. I look forward to diving into it tonight, self, because from my own experience, I know for sure that they are still not listening to a lot of things where we are concerned. And the unfortunate thing is that I haven't gone into the book yet, so I can't speak to that. But I can speak to this. The unfortunate thing is that we ourselves as Black people still are not listening. And it is important that if we are to move forward, a lot of the things that we take for granted must no longer be taken for granted, but must be seriously looked at, analyzed, and remedied. And so thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Now, I shared with you quite a few pieces from the first one. I will not be quite as generous as with this one, but it's also some heavy materials in this particular one. The first one has a collection of about 100 pieces, and this one will also have even a little bit more, but I will be sharing 3 of the pieces from this book. The book to which I'm referring, as you can breathe. I too cannot breathe. Amidst the insanity of man's inhumanity to man, I cannot breathe. My lungs are filled with the pungent fumes that emanate from filthy minds that have been indoctrinated by centuries of hate. I cannot breathe. Stolen like a thief in the night, shackled and whipped into submission, hair matted, feet swollen, stomachs bloated, skin burned like midnight, and panting from the arduous journey, I cannot breathe. Packed like sardines in a cannon, stripped from all human decency, deafened by the wailing songs and cries for help, transported to a strange land with strange customs, and forced to eat their crap. I cannot breathe. Forced to do only what I'm told and stripped of my nobility, subjected to a state of despair where attempts to escape meant I would be hanged. I cannot breathe. Centuries have passed and my throat is still fair game. And although I'm running for my health or relaxing in a park or lawfully driving down the street, I cannot breathe. You see, we've been subjugated for centuries to a stifling existence that hampers our attempts to breathe and be treated as a human being worthy of the basics. What we face is nothing new. If one of us still cannot breathe, I too cannot breathe. And it's important for us to know that, and I assume some of you did not realize that I was setting that up at first, and I somewhat struggled with how much of the drama I should put in there because I know it produces some anxiety. But I wanted to drive home the point. Think about George Floyd and what he was going through, and how some people may have seen him struggling, and they were feeling helpless, not knowing what to do. He was struggling there, cannot breathe, unless we think that this is an American issue, and so we should not focus, so be too concerned about it. Remember the saying that when America sneezes, what happens? Catches a cold. And then Dr. Martin Luther King reminded us that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And he also reminded us that we are caught up in a network of inescapable mutuality. So whenever we think that's what's happening in the United States, or what's happening in Jamaica, or some of these other places, have nothing to do with us in this healthy oasis that we refer to as Barbados. Remember, injustice anywhere means that we have reason to be concerned. The next piece I want to share with you is a piece, and men, I assume, I'm going to share a little bit with the ladies, and those of you who are mothers, you need to remember this, and those of you who are fathers who are raising sons, Rodney, remember this, right? Because this is a piece, it simply says, a short piece that says, men who can't cry even in the dark. Throbbing, pulsating veins pressing against the flesh that covers my temple. Society has confined me to a false perception of strength. The expectation that as a man, I should conceal my emotions in favor of a facade of healthy self-control. Even in those private moments, those moments of solitude where I am visible to no one but me, and those I may allow in my space, I'm still held hostage to the image of what a man should be, though troubled by pangs of pain. Though I can feel the salty ocean of tears pressing against the floodgates of my burdened soul, I find myself heaping sandbags to restrict the cleansing that may do me well. But hampered by my thoughts of manhood governing my every move, I suck it in and suck it up, which simply leaves things in a muck, for even in the stillness of the midnight, not a tear escapes the confines of my perceptions that are kept intact. For I cannot cry, not even in the dark, for my manhood would not let me. So is it really a sign of strength, or is it a sign of bondage? Men and ladies, think about it. Men who can't cry, even in the dark. And even as the last piece I want to share from this book is one that is talk about forgive us for failing you. And we talk a lot about the youth, especially those of us who are more seasoned, so to speak. We say, oh, the young people this or the young people that, or when we were younger, this didn't happen and that didn't happen. We do not always take responsibility for how we may have failed them. And so this piece not only speaks to the issue of race, but it pushes us to take responsibility and ask for forgiveness for failing some of the next generation. It says, their younger generation, forgive us if we have failed you. We pray that you will find a much better way than we did to right the wrongs that continue. Decades ago, we fought against the injustices that have been in place for centuries. Though there were some progress, we failed to keep the pressure on, and some of the progress has been lost. We're sorry. We turn to you to find a better way and to offer you the support that you need. We join with you in confronting the atrocities, hoping a more significant change would come and that this change would last. With our lived experiences and with your energies and wisdom, we will fight a system that is still unkind to us, so we can live to see another day, and as we live, flourish. We acknowledge your right to be angry at us. We accept that. Now let us join our common anger at the suppressive and violent system that has divided us and distracted us from our pain. United we stand in the battle for freedom. Forgive us, young people, so we can move forward. They're still not listening. And as the minister said, and he did not know that this was also a focus of the book. When people read the title, they're still not listening. They think this is a message primarily to whites and those of other races. It's also a message to us, and you will see there's a section in this book. Each book is divided into several sections. There's a section called Misguided. And in that section, it reminds us that some of us are also misguided. Sheron.
Thank you, Errol. What I'm taking for that is that I want to see men cry. I don't care what you say. Mr. Marc Daniel. Andre Daniel is a well-known musician in Barbados, having played with a number of festival bands and bands in the hotel sector. I had the opportunity to work with Mr. Andre a number of times in my life, my former life as an entertainer. But he has been the creative collaborator on this project, fusing musical notes with Errol's words of wisdom. Andre, please come and say a few words.
Right, well, good morning, everyone. I hate masks. The fact that I can't really see much of you, I can only see the top part of you. Anyway, I am under heavy manners. My wife has instructed me to behave, so I will. And since the two of these wonderful people share the same birth date, I will also behave, because then I will have two persons on my back. Errol and I have been friends for too long to chat about. So it's more of a privilege to have this time. I look around and I see where we are. We're in a library, and I think we're both a little older than most of the people, because generally when I think of libraries, I think we're here with a book launch. And the words of wisdom that are penned by this young gentleman should be experienced by more than one person, right? I could call you young now, not later. But the thing that strikes me, and I'll say I'm listed as a creative collaborator and friend, but it's first a friend. And we have lots of discussions. My manners. Protocol having been established, everyone, nice to see you. But at the end of the day, a lot of our youth are not reading. A lot of our youth are driven. I mean, I'm a teacher, and I have a hard time with them saying, you know, listen, all of the books that I would have bought over the years are available for you for free, beg your pardon, but you don't read them, right? So we have these discussions back and forth, because a lot of what he has written needs to sink into the heads of our young people for meaningful change. Beg your pardon. So when I think about what I'm doing and the role that I have, I am humbled by it. I am privileged to do it because what I see in Errol as a person is the kind of balance that I think lots of us need to be impacted by. The intellectual, yes, because he's Professor Errol Bolden. The spiritual man, because he has a deep, enduring faith in God. And for me, that's critical because my whole life is centered around just that. And two, as an educator, because you're committed to enriching the lives of young persons or other persons so that their estate in life is raised. And so also what they leave for the next generation that follows them is important. So when I think about the work that we do together, I don't really see it as just a creative collaboration, but I see it as a way of impacting lives for the better, especially since we're in a museum. Beg your pardon, right? Especially since we're in a museum. And the thing is to make sure that what we leave, the legacy that we leave, helps them to stand on the shoulders of those persons. Pardon me. So I don't see myself really as a creative collaborator as much as I see myself as someone who is going to help the message hopefully have greater impact for someone. As John would have said of Jesus, I will decrease so that he must increase. In this role, I want to be as transparent as possible so that what it is that will be accomplished by what is written will be accomplished with efficacy, and it will do the work in raising the estate of the people that we live among. I know there's a lot of race-conscious language in it. I'll be brief, coming up. But the reality of it is that we are all one. So Black or white, Jew or Greek, slave or free, we are still one in Christ. And so at the end of the day, we have a responsibility to raise each other up. Of course, we have these discussions, right? But I sincerely trust that in every way, whatever we do together, not only speaks to the Black and raises their level of what they need to accomplish, but I also want it to reach to the white, to the pink, to the blue, to the green, to everyone, so that we together will make the differences that we need to make. So as I celebrate you, I look forward to working some more with you, okay?
Thank you, Andre. And now we will have final readings from Errol from selections, The Lord is My Shepherd, My Journey into His Presence.
Actually, what I'm going to do is simply give you an overview of this book and let you know how it's laid out, because it's not the typical devotional guide. And I will leave you with the cultural piece that I told you that I would when I started. The book, The Lord is My Shepherd, My Journey into His Presence, is a monthly devotional guide. It is written and dedicated to my mom, who, had she lived, would have turned 101 this year. She died about 6 years ago. Both she and my mom would have been 101. They've had children for a long time, and that's so some of my brothers and sisters are 20 years or something. I know I have one of my brothers here. I'm not telling his age, right? I said some, so you don't know if he is one, right? But I was blessed to have a good mother and good parents who taught me the importance of being grounded and in the scriptures and hiding the word in our hearts. And so this book, when my mom was at the end of her life, as she was facing some cognitive challenges, she would always want us to say Psalms 23, the Lord is my shepherd, even as she was journeying into God's presence. And so I decided this is one publication that I was working on for a number of years. Really, almost 15 years. It took almost 15 years. It was virtually done 15 years ago, but for whatever reason, I kept tweaking it, changing the title, and everything happens at the right time. And so this year with the pandemic, I decided that, in the midst of everything, in the midst of the dealing with COVID-19, in the midst of dealing with the racial challenges, we also needed to find hope in someone bigger than ourselves. And so the journeying into his presence does not mean that as you're preparing for death. It simply means that each day we should be on a journey into God's presence, with God as our shepherd. And it's a devotional guide that focuses on growth and self-love. I must let you know it is not the typical devotional guide, and here's why. Some of the topics that I deal with, because remember I'm trained both in social work and public health, have that slant, right? And so it will push you to think about some things that the typical devotional guide may not push you to think about. As I said, it's a monthly devotional guide. So at the start of the month, you are asked to write some goal statements, what you want to achieve. And then you're supposed to write your action plans, how you plan to achieve those goals. At the end of the month, you come back and you answer the question, did you reach your goals? What helped you to reach your goals? What posed the challenge for you to accomplish your goals, and what lessons did you learn? And then based on the lessons you learned, what changes are you supposed to make? Because if we see life as dynamic, we know it constantly changes. If you're stagnant, something is wrong, right? But then you would want to find out after you've decided what changes you would make, how do you measure those changes that you're going to make? And the last two are the ones that I find particularly exciting. What will you do to reward yourself for the month now ending? And this is something that I had to learn to do. Some of my friends said, every time you get paid, you should pay yourself. Even if it is something small, seemingly insignificant, you should make sure you find some time to treat yourself. And it could be an activity, it could be a gift, or it could be improved self-talk, because, we sometimes focus on things that are not going good with us, but realize that now we may be at a better place than we were last month. And not only that, when we are blessed, it is important that we recognize that we are blessed to bless. So even as you recognize how you are blessed at the end of a month, think about how you could bless another person, because you're in a little better position than you were hopefully next month. Or even if things may be rough, you still got some blessing, and someone could benefit from the blessing. So the book is laid out like that. And as I said, pushes you to think about some things that you may not readily think about in a devotional guide. And I purposely did it as a monthly devotional guide, so you'd have a time to write your goals, put the action plans in place, and then make your assessment. One of the things a lot of us who are in the diaspora, and I assume folks here, got excited about when we heard our Honorable Prime Minister Mia Motley gave the charge to some entertainers to do a piece called This Is Who We Are. And we enjoyed the catchy beat of it, and we love seeing the scenes from Barbados and seeing all of the entertainers. Now, I do know about copyrights, right? And this is not a copyright violation. That song was This Is Who We Are, am I correct? So make sure that you let Edward Yearwood and those others know that this is not a copyright infringement, because This is who we are. This is who we really are. Not a contradiction to what he wrote, however. Barbados, Los Barbados, the bearded one, the land of the sea and sun, pride and industry, the land of flying fish that is not from Tobago, Bajan flying fish, the land of cuckoo with our flying fish, salt, meat, and ground provisions, cow heel soup, and soup with chicken steppers, bush tea, orange peel tea, sea moss, a land of sweet treats when we all meet, the land of sugar cakes and tamarind balls, juicy and soda bits, Bajan cherries, and my favorite, conkeys. A land upon which nature smiled proudly, a land of beautiful landscapes and coral reefs, with tropical breezes to soothe the sweltering heat. A land with clear blue waters and white sand beaches, where sea eggs and sea turtles can be found. A land with caves and caverns, the Animal Flower Cave and Harrison's Cave. This is who we are. 166 square miles of intricate maneuvers to get to the same place. The land of masters of cricket, the creators of rum and spooge, and our own brand of soca. The place where Mr. Hardin once burned, crop over, Bridgetown Market, Oyster and Fish Festival, are cultural celebrations. Sometimes you'll be pomposetting or showing off as captured in the Bajan dialect because we love our country. A land when we say cheese on bread has nothing to do with food, oh my goodness. Where coconut vendors and snow cones still exist. This is who we still are. A land where hiking and sailing coexist as pastimes. A land with historical formalities and conventional pleasantries. A land with too many tamarind rods as rods of corrections, where a cut tail has nothing to do with the tail of a lizard. The land I proudly call home, the land where I became a man, the land where I got my first kiss and got horned. The land that is a symbol of my past and future. This is my land, this is your land, where you will always be welcome, for this is who we are. This is the home of a proud people, the home of a humble people, the land of beautiful, talented people who are credit to the nation wherever they go. A people of faith, a sanctified people, a satisfied people with principles. The sheer magnitude of its ethereal beauty is found in the spirit of its people. Wherever I go, I proudly share, this is who we are, this is who I am. Or island home of Barbados, a gem in the Caribbean Sea.
In my open description, I said his navel string barrier, and it certainly is. I would not like to see his suitcase when he's going back, because something tells me that it will be laden with certain things, wrapped in banana leaves. I'll now open the floor to any questions you might want to pose to the author. Anyone? Any questions? Like, what's the price of the book? Okay, we move along. Errol, I'm now going to ask you to give us a vote of thanks. And after this, we will move to the book signing and we will end it all. And your people can purchase books today? Okay. So get the wallet, Sultan. Okay, there's a question in the back, sorry. Yes. Okay, which one?
No, all of them.
All of them. All right. Yeah.
I made sure I brought a price list with me. You have to anticipate, right? Now, the 3 books that I shared with you this morning are all 30 Barbados apiece. right? Now, you will see on the table, there are some other books that were mentioned in my introduction. The one, Tabansi and the Golden Touch, and the Sparrow and the Mustard Seed. I have few of the soft copies of those books there. The soft covers are, soft covers are 30 BDS a piece. The hard covers are 40. And you would appreciate those ones as well because the illustrations were done by Barbadians. And I am, as you heard, I'm collaborating with Andre on a CD or of sorts of some of my work. And I've been collaborating with some others on the development even of the therapeutic game, because I know there's some things I could get done more cheaply in the United States. But this is one way that I have chosen and have encouraged others to do, to give back, right? And so as I come home and collaborate with others, that's my way of giving back. And I listened, Dr. Johnson had a session on last week that I think it was Saturday, that focused on, well, they talked about children's books and that how we need to write stories about the Barbadian culture. And so I decided to take up that challenge. So at some point in time, I would be also connecting with some historians here. I'm not going to tell you what the first book is about, because in case some of you take that idea or share with someone, and next thing you know, I'm coming here with the children's book on the Barbadian heroes and say, oh, we just had one out like that. So I plan, God's willing, to return later this year when the CD would be available, right? The piece that apparently you seem to like, This Is Who We Really Are. And sir, I don't believe there was any copyright infringement. Okay, so I have an endorsement here, right? So my hope is, and I was talking to Andre about it, that we can capture some scenes and create a video that captures, that brings out the beauty of that piece. I should need to also tell you that I've been asked by some folks in South Carolina to record that piece, so it will be played at schools in South Carolina. And I'm sure some of you would have heard, familiar with Rhoda Green and the cultural Barbados Carolina corridor. When I lived in South Carolina, I worked with her on that. And so there is that strong connection with Barbados. And so I was pleased when I was asked to come to South Carolina, which I will do within the next few weeks, and have that piece recorded to be played in some of the schools. So my hope is, and the Ministry of Culture is represented here, so I'm not going to be shameful in saying this, that I would get some degree of support from the Ministry of Culture in making sure that this piece gets out there. Yes, Rodney, you had a question? Okay. But you're looking around the direction. Well, I'm looking at it so you to help remind the minister, because I know the minister is very busy. I know he heard it because the person is right behind him. Right. Also, and he happens well, and I know he has done well. So, and I have several witnesses, right? So we hope, and in all sincerity, that we can do some of this, because the colleague to which who referred to earlier, Dr. Patrick Rowe. One of his encouragement to me, he said, EB, called me EB, he said, it's time to do an audio book. So that is what I've been encouraged to do.
Young persons and how we say trouble sort of toss them away. And it would be remiss of me not to be an advocate for children, because we have a public library service and we have a children's department. But what is missing a lot from children and their activity or interaction is that adults in their lives are not introducing them at an early enough stage to the written word, to reading, to be read to, so that they can understand and develop that love that you have for reading, that love for interacting with the word. And I'm sure Dr. Saul, who's sitting quietly, will let you know that if you don't introduce children to that written word at a very pivotal point in their lives, they will just use their ears all the time. Because the lights of the computer, I mean, we all love the lights, and the lights are exciting, and that's what the computer does, and it lets them move and things like that. But the written word, it must be introduced to children at the earliest point in their lives, so that they too can love what you love. And then you will not feel futile in your attempts to say that children are not reading. Because how can you read? Did the Ethiopian eunuch say, how will I know? How will I know? Somebody must be there to guide me. And luckily he had Philip.
Yes.
So this is important. What we are doing here is important. But we must also share it with the children on a daily basis. We have storytelling at the library. Unfortunately, COVID took a knock on that. But as soon as we open up again, we're going to be there again, right back in their lives. And all we can do is encourage parents and adults in their lives to bring them back home to the roots of reading and culture.
That's so very true.
As a father of two young kids, right? I explain that I try to read to my kids and try to encourage them to read, and I want to talk work at the right on and practice for my parents also, right? But a lot of parents are content to just give each other a tablet or a phone, right? Because it's easy as a babysitter. They look at home, because it's babysitter, right? And it creates that look maybe that where they have the gratification of engaging, but what I find also is it takes the attention around the kids. They pay a lot of attention to the tablet, but the content is changing so rapidly. You find a lot of them saying ADHD and most of them, but they can't concentrate because everything is changing so quickly, right? So it's actually a deficiency for kids, right? I'm in their 30s, in their 30s now. But a lot of my friends, like they all children got phones, tablets, everything. And for the time daycare, or they expect to get home for this. Make sure they get with children outside when people pass some children running around playing football and running road, because a lot of that now, people are not, the communities are not as intertwined as they were before. The kids are not over what else they are before, they just all going to home, is video games, tablets, and phones. Right? So, but for me, I also love to read. I still have a lot of my children that they even bigger than what's not. A lot of the content we have obviously is foreign content, so it's better to have content we can actually relate to. But even the video content they're watching, there's a lot of Caucasian kids living in massive houses, parents are rich. And my daughter telling me she wants money. I said, well, where you got money from? So content our kids can relate to, because even in our teenagers and our young 20s, a lot of them are being too many Instagram walls now and trying to live a life that they can't afford. So they're not prioritizing that they build a future. Doesn't generation is accumulating less wealth or putting things in place to hope the parents will play well to leave something, right? But everything is that they say this content is from not locally, right? And that'll become what they're saying as success and what's not. So even from a young age, our kids are being taught, okay, well, this person's parents has 4 cars in the garage, and they do all these fun things. They don't show them school work or having family values, always glorifying a lifestyle that, our children are now seen visually and then want to attain, but they don't understand what we work and what we're looking at, or that some of it is just fictitious, right? So reading, especially content that we are available to us, is going to help our children have a better outlook, or we're going to just leave them to these voices and 5 players on the road, we don't know where the direction our society going.
Yes, Minister.
Your commitment to introduce your child and any children in your vicinity, any children that you have charge of, any children that in your reach. That's why it's important that you introduce them to these things at the earliest point, so that then they too can start critically analyzing what's real and what's not real, what I can afford, what is good for me, and make those choices, because without what you the input, then the output is equivalent. If you don't put it in, you won't get it out.
Yeah, Minister, you want to say?
No, but what I wanted to say is that, and forgive me because I usually get, I'm guessing to be a very straight talk, but I don't know how to get it. The problem that we face where it comes to, as you were mentioning, reading and all the other things, the adults have given up their responsibility. Adults have thrown their hands in the air and have backed off of this society. For most of us in down in the room, you know quite well that if we were in church, if we were in school, if we were on the road behaving bad or whatever, that the entire community was a part and parcel of your upbringing, so to speak. What has happened now, so that when we mentioned the whole idea of us putting things in a particular format for children, what we're doing is that we are, as you said in your piece, about forgiving ourselves, forgive us, we are feeding into that and disadvantaging our children by saying that, you know, they want it in this format. It's not what they want in this format. It is what is best for them. Who knows what's best for them at any particular point in time? Has to be adults. For some unknown reason, adults now believe that children must lead. Children cannot lead. That's why you have children. That's why you got adults and you have children. The leading is not unfair or bullying, but leading is using your experience to pass on information to a less experienced people, so that they don't make the same mistakes that we make. And until we get back to that, the library is the perfect place for reading, but I also make the point that the library has been doing exceptional work online and still being able to reach children. The library just had a Spanish program for children, over 100 children learn Spanish. So we have no excuse as to how we as the organization get out there. But I think the point was made earlier. We don't have any control over individual families or parents. But I think with the help of Ministry of Education, with civil society and other things, we must make a call. But those parents who may be delinquent in dealing with their children in terms of reading and all the other things that we do, to encourage them, you know, short people and bring them along. That reading is important because it doesn't matter if the information comes to you on a tablet or it comes to you fast or slow. If you can't read it, you can't read it. And the information is of no help to you if you can't read it. So, yes, having things that are audio and visual, that complements it. But if you can't string words together, and understand, you said it again, power of words. If you miss out on that aspect of your life, you're always going to be at the bottom of that. Right. That's all I want.
One more point, understand too that once again, content the parents are seeing, we see all these shows of lots of kids. You know, the kids, have freedom of speech. There's a lot of Americanized jargon, right? Have freedom of speech, and the children can think for themselves, and not saying that we don't want children to think independently or what's not. And yes, we have some good ways of discipline in the past, right? But I think we're just adopting what we see without understanding the context of it. So a lot of children are not being allowed to grow up as children. A lot of I mean, you know, adults at 8 years old, they make certain decisions and answer the parents, or, you know, the rest of the child, they can't do this because this is a child, listening, right? And a lot of that is not feeding into children making decisions, arbitrary decisions about studying consequences, right? So the very disconnect. So children are just doing things that figure, you know, that ain't happen, or my parents can't give me that thing. Or, you know, they hear those things, like seeing things they're watching, my parents can't tell me that thing, or they hate money.
Right, because we have to realize that the brain of a child is underdeveloped, of even of an 18-year-old, and that not be excusing the behaviors of the 18-year-old, but we have to realize that their brains are still not as developed as ours. And so recognizing some things that are developmental, right, and operating within those limitations are very important. But what the research also shows, even the children's book, that we need to also be mindful of which children's books we expose our children to. Because if you look at some of them, a lot of them really send a lot of negative messages, right? And so you have to, if you just give them a book, that's not what you need to do. You need to screen them too. And more, the research is saying to give them books that help them to connect with different emotions besides just happy or sad or fighting. So they have a broader vocabulary that can more accurately capture what they said. And one of the books I have there, I only have one of them left because most of them were sold here, is a therapeutic coloring book, which pushes the child to connect with a variety of emotions. Andre, just one.
I would say that one of the things that I find also happens is that without having children reading, which by extension means that they're not, as you rightfully said, encouraged to read, it means that they have an inability to imagine something that is not in vivid color. Now, whilst that doesn't sound like a challenge, Dr. Bolden is Dr. Bolden because he would have read for his degree. Because past a certain point in your development, you are taught, but then past the point you have to read for your knowledge, right? And process information and be able to come up with some kind of theory or concept that wasn't there before. My fear is that because of the way that we have it now, if it's not vivid in front of them, they're not able to process. I mean, I'm not going to get into a spiritual discussion about the word becoming God and becoming flesh, because that would be irrelevant in this context if you're not a believer. But the reality of it is that if we can't encourage some kind of progress in that direction, right, which means we have to find creative use. This is your space. We will have to find creative ways of making this live and relevant for a culture of persons who do not respect it or regard it, right? And this is what I tell my students all the time. It's a crazy thing, but the reality of it is that I think that we all owe it to our nation, because at some point we're not going to be here. This is why I teach. I teach because I am painfully aware that at some point in time, the same people that we talk about are going to be those persons that are going to be left to influence other persons. So if we miss the opportunity, then we have really missed the opportunity, right? And we cannot rely on statistics that say that Barbados is 90 whatever percent liberal, because we fail to address the real situation, the real significance of the demise of that when we do not acknowledge it, one, and take active steps to put things in place to rectify it.
Right, and I know the discussion, well said. Rodney, a short one, because I know I'm going to be getting some looks shortly about wrapping it up. Yes.
One more thing about when you touch on the part of emotion, we mentioned about men can be dark. Remember, part of our upbringing is that men have to be tough. We don't show emotion. So even in the same extra about the relationship. So growing up, you're taught to show aggression, strength, and then when you're older, you're asked to get touch your emotional side, the empathy, and that sort of stuff, right? So you go into a relationship trying to be macho and what's not, right? You don't want to show your weak points. But then when you know cohabitate with a person, or you're supposed to know all emotional and constantly your problems, but you have no shoulders. So it's like, you're taught one thing, and as we get older, back in the 18th, we're the you get older now, you're supposed to say, well, you're liable to some problems.
Mhm.
Right? That means a little bit, a person goes to therapy and actually divulge information or problem or stuff. It creates a lot of problems for men as they become adults. And they're going to say, well, oh, yeah, that should be emotional set of thought to me. But there's something that customer do. Right? As we reach breaking point. Right? So all of the things that I think, the what would help the young men to understand is that getting young men that developing at that age to read.
Right, and the reality is, without getting too deep into the research, right, that I would joke with folks as to why the men tend to die sooner than the ladies. And I'm not going to say that because I escaped the tomatoes earlier, and I will I want to leave here without anything red on my clothes. But the reality, the reality is that when we keep things inside, and this is science backs this up, right? It contributes to the constriction, a lot of valuable vessels, heart attacks, hypertension, a whole host of things. When we keep it in and don't let it out, because we haven't been given permission ago. And then I asked if you think that the boys, because they don't cry, or given permission to cry, hurt any less? What do you think the little girl said? No, it's just that they are not allowed to. So you see, even the little girls realize that, even at that age. And so it is we who have been enlightened ought to then begin to do things. So the next month, there will be a book, as I said, The Mystery of the Duck, that deals with bullying and self-love and what's not. And there are one or two others, but being familiar with the research, I'm focused on publishing some other children's books, but even these books, the Fight for Justice, they're words out of the mouths of babes, where the kids are asked about, okay, am I going to live to become an adult? So even some of those, the voices of kids are also represented in this book, because we sometimes forget that with all of the challenges of the pandemic and with all the violence, the racial tensions and all those things that are going on, that the children are listening and the children are hurting and the children have an opinion. At this point in time, please allow me to transition into offering the vote of thanks. This is the second book launch that I've done in Barbados, as you would have heard. The first one occurred about 3 years ago, as my friend Amena Weekes stated. And so when I must thank the library staff for giving me the space to do this. When I came home, this was not part of the plan, right? And I must say it is Dr. Sheron Johnson that first mentioned it and gave me the contact for the director of the library service. And I know she had a prior engagement and she could not be here, but please thank her on my behalf as well. And so from the very start, they were very responsive to facilitating this session. And I know they said that it has been a while since you had an in-person session. Right. And so I am so very grateful that you allowed me, you all allowed me that space. And then I was also very excited that Mr. Adamson, I believe I have the right name, when I realized that he was also a Unique High School alum. That also made me excited. And he has been very generous in his support of this. And I must thank and if you would join me in thanking, I believe, the young lady in the back who is responsible for making me look good in print, right? On the flyers. And I understand she doesn't want to make sure that she's left out. It was a team effort. So thank you, sir. I guess I can say young man. I'm at that stage where I can say young man for your support with it. Minister, So many times we invite ministers to attend different functions and they don't show up. I can speak with a little boldness that I know some here might be a little hesitant to, but I let you know that I appreciate your presence. And you didn't just come, you stayed and you participated. So that, let's applaud the minister for that. And I saw your nods of affirmation when my godson shared those suggestions. I saw the nods of affirmations from both Dr. Johnson and yourself, right? And I look forward to working with your ministry and to the degree to which I could encourage some others in the Washington metropolitan area and the Baltimore area to lend some support. There is a significant Barbadian population there, and some are doing pretty well, that I think that their talents could be better sourced. But I'm going to say this openly, one of the challenges as we get is that it's sometimes difficult to give back, to reach the persons to facilitate that. And so, but I would like to just work with your office to the degree that is possible to see if we could facilitate some more involvement for more members of the Barbadian diaspora. And I can only speak primarily of those in the Washington metropolitan area. So you have my commitment to that. As I started to say, but I must make this broad statement to include all the staff members of the National Library Service who have been very much involved in pulling this together. Thank you so very much, and for facilitating the opportunity for those who could not be physically present. I thank you so very much. Let's give them an applause. I don't know if any members of the media are still here. CBC, thank you so very much. When you see the cameras, you don't know where what it represents. But thank you so very much for staying. Thank you for your coverage, right? It is always good to, when you do something, you need to want to make sure that it gets out to the audience, because if you do something, keep it to yourself, well, that's almost a futile effort. So I want to thank those of you members of the media for your presence. Thank you so very much. Let's give them a applause. To those who gave reflections, my longtime dear friend and the mother of my two of my godchildren, there are 9 of them, Amena Weekes. Thank you so very much for your ongoing support, and that of your husband, who was silent today, but I appreciate her and him and the presence of my goddaughter as well, Sheron Weekes. To Mr. Marc Andre Daniel, you could tell from the way he speaks that we have some long but exciting exchanges, and his wife is constantly shaking her head. But you know, you would know him, you will see him on TV different times. He's brilliant at what he does. And so thank you, both Amena and Marc Andre, for your reflections and your support of my work. For those of you who I met today for the first time, the others who have some connections, you may say that they came because of their connections. You did not have the connections, but you were still here. I do want to tell you that I'm honored by your presence, right? And I hope that you will leave your information, and so that when we have subsequent events, that you can also be informed. So thank you so very much for making the sacrifice to come. To my brother George, who has been at all of my book launches. This is the 5th book launch I've had for the year with the different books, and George has been at every one. And so thank you so very much, George, for your support. For my former student and big brother, Reverend Clayton Springer, thank you so very much for your continued guidance and support. And to all of the others, my mentee, Dion George, right? And some of the others, to Dr. Patricia Saul, thank you so very much for your support. And Pastor Margarita, Reverend Margarita, thank you so very much, right? And my neighbor who is giving me a local over there, thank you so very much for your support. You got last week, but you were here today. Thank you so very much. For any that I may have overlooked, Rosalind, thank you for your support. And my cousin is the cousin, Faye Bayer, in the back there. Thank you. I really get excited when I see family come out and support. Right? Thank you so very much for this. And Dr. Sheron Johnson, you made it happen. And our mutual friend, Dr. Patrick Rowe, would be very proud that you facilitated this. And I do want to dedicate this session to the memory of our dear friend, Dr. Patrick Rowe, who has been a cheerleader for decades. And we know that if he was still with us, he would have been here front and center. So I do want to acknowledge his support as well. At this point in time, I will. Right, I just said that I understood there were just some closing remarks and directions. That's it? Yeah, that's it. Okay, so let me tell you this. You enjoyed it, right? But evidence of the level of your enjoyment is seen through the purchasing of the books. They make good gifts. If you say the devotional guide would be good for Christmas gifts, you can hold them or you can start reading it now, and the year starts from now. So the proof is in the pudding. So let me enjoy the pudding. We have cash, right? You can pre-order some things. As I said, the book is coming up, but at all costs, I would like to stay in touch with you. And thank you again so very much.